Hello, everybody. How are you tonight? Calt, PJ, Chris, for tonight. Thank you for coming, and welcome to Kaleidoscope of Crime. This is a true crime channel where I talk about everything true crime Canada and the broader issues and conversations that the crimes highlight. Today, I wanted to talk about accused sex trafficker Peter Nygard. So to do that, I've invited my good friend Piper from Crowdsourced Illuminations to join me for just a little chat between friends. It's nothing formal, nothing deep dive or anything like that, just a little chat between two girlfriends to talk about Peter Nygard and the crimes that he is accused of committing. He has not been convicted, so everything is alleged. And before we start, I just want to say that there is a trigger warning for CSA, child sexual abuse. There will be discussions of that. So please, if that is triggering for you, it's fine to sit this video out. So with all of that out of the way, let's bring in Piper. Say hi to her.
Hi. I hope everybody can hear me okay. And let me know if there's any kind of echo.
I hear you and I don't have an echo. How about everybody in the chat? Is everything good? Ooh. It's just me. Okay. I'm looking frozen on my computer, but that could be my computer, so I'll just come back over here. Uh-oh.
Is everything?
I'm not seeing any comments from anybody yet. I'm not seeing any comments from anybody. Did they leave?
Oops,
Oh, Chris says he can hear us.
Okay, and I think I just caused an echo perhaps for a moment, but I think I've got it fixed. And Chris says
Okay.
he can hear me. Good.
He can hear you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Long time no see, Chris. Great.
Thank you for being here, Chris. We really appreciate it. You're an awesome supporter.
So thanks for having me. We've been talking about this Peter Nygard for a long
couple of years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And we just keep putting it off. Well, I mean, part of it is there's so much. I mean, it is just overwhelming, the entire case, the number of victims, the years that it spanned, the amount of details.
Yeah, and it's where do you start, where do you finish?
Yeah.
And just when you think you've got it, then something else would pop up back at that time. Now it's been quiet for a while, so
right.
A little breathing room, a little room to process and
yeah. And you know, the other thing is that justice moves slowly in cases like this. And so
it really does. And then it gets even slower when it's international like this and you've got multiple countries fighting over who gets him, right?
Yes, exactly. Multiple jurisdictions. It becomes complicated. I mean, just think about locally when you try to get anything done. You know, there are multiple agencies that want to kind of oversee things. So it's that times, you know, well, just exponentially. And when you're talking about his crimes spanned from, well, he was born in Finland, but then he moved to, I think, Manitoba when he was maybe 13 or something with his family. So his crimes span from Canada to the Bahamas to New York City to who knows where else. So it's just really complex with all of the different moving arms of justice. And so he's still, we don't really know, we don't have any more news as to, what's going to happen with him. But I
Right.
guess I won't get too far into the minutia of it. Um, I guess maybe should we start and even say like, well, who is this fella?
Yeah, yeah. Who's Peter Nygard? I'm sure there's
Yeah,
probably, even in our tiny little chat, there's probably people who are like, never heard of him.
right. Justice Served Daily says they follow that in Indiana, and I was just going to let them know I live in Indiana as well. Yeah. Thanks for
Well, in
everybody
that
for
case,
coming.
Justice Served Daily, thank you for being here. And I hope we don't disappoint too much with our
Yeah.
unprofessionalism and whatever.
Well, I think unprofessional might be, a good thing. We're gonna just casually discuss this
It's
guy, and
just a
everything
casual
is, well,
girlfriends chatting about. Go
yeah,
ahead.
it's a hen party. But and the other thing
Yeah,
is they're all allegations and they're all opinion at this point. There's been no um final
no
resolution, is kind of what we
convictions.
said earlier. So,
Yeah, it's all alleged. It's not, we're not saying this is definite. It's just
right.
these are the
And that's
allegations that are being made.
yeah. And that's another reason that it's good that it's just casual with us, chatting, is because it really, it's not like there's anything official to report. We're just chatting about our opinions. So everybody here, will say what we feel or what we've found, as we've researched it over the years or heard things over the years. But everybody here should do their own research and form their own opinions, and not take our word for it.
Yeah,
So, Peter Nygard, do you want to tell who he is, or?
sure. He's, as you said, he was born in Finland, moved to Canada with his family when he was a child. You say 13. I thought it was between 5 and 8, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Just a kid
You
anyway.
might be
So he grew
right.
up. He grew up in Manitoba in a small town near Winnipeg, and then eventually his family moved to Winnipeg, where he graduated high school, went to university in North Dakota, and studied business. And then he got into fashion in the 70s, early 70s, 1970s. And that really is where his offending is alleged to have began, is at that time. So
Yeah,
he
1967 is when he bought into the first women's clothing line company. It was a small clothing line company. So
yeah, and that was in
1967.
Toronto, right? I
I
believe.
don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and so he really he bought that small retailer and built it up really quickly, actually. I've got my notes here. I forget what year. Yeah, 1970 he bought the clothing company. And
But
then, yeah, he By the 1973, I believe it was, he was making $1 million a year, which back then was a lot of money.
In 2018, they said the annual sales was over $200 million for
Yeah.
his company. So, the thing about his clothing was it wasn't high end. So Peter Nygard was a clothing designer. He, first bought into a small women's clothing company early 1970. I read 1967 was his very first one, but I'm sure he had lots of stuff going on. But and then he became a clothing designer, and the clothes that he designed and made were accessible. It wasn't high end, expensive stuff. You would find them at, any strip
Yeah,
mall.
he wasn't New York runway model type thing. It was
Right.
the over 30s normal shape women like us.
They described it as comfortable clothes. So my kind of clothes.
Yeah.
But they were available at Walmart, Dillard's. His line was in lots of places. He ended up having a headquarters then in New York City in Times Square.
Yeah, I think he
Um,
was in Eaton's and Sears and all kinds of just, where everybody normally shops.
right, right. And so he, went from humble beginnings to being a multi-millionaire.
Yeah,
And
his dad was a farmer and then later a banker. So they didn't live the high life by any means.
right. Um, do you mind sharing my slide real quick? I was just going to show a
Absolutely.
picture of him.
Okay, I have shared it, so let me know what's up.
Okay, it might just take a second to populate there.
Sorry, folks, I'm on a different computer and it turns out to be way too slow for this, so we'll be back on the old computer next time. But I'm already set up and going here, so we'll just have to do the best we can with it for tonight.
It doesn't look like it's.
One thing that really stood out to me, it's not showing up.
Well, it's still on my end dithered. It's not showing as shared or like added to the stream. But maybe it's just slow.
Try
There it
again.
goes.
Yeah, I clicked add to stream. There we go. Okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
perfect. That's okay. So, I mean, this guy, first of all, I mean, just look at his picture. Could you imagine owning your own company and then putting your photo? There's people like this in the world, and it just blows me away. But look at him. And
Honestly,
then,
the first thing I think when somebody brands themselves to that extent is holy ego. No,
oh
thank you.
yeah, yeah, we've got some narcissistic characteristics or some traits going on here. This is it kind of blown up a little bit. I mean, this has got to be airbrushed, right? The guy's like 70 some odd years old. The His body, it looks like his face is on this entirely like painted or airbrushed body. I mean, it's just craziness. Anyway, but we'll
Well, yeah,
talk about
when
this.
you see other footage and pictures of him, that's definitely not him.
Yeah.
That's not his body.
Well, here, let me show you his body, and we'll talk about this later. I think we'll probably get into this, but his pampered parties, right? That he, the pamper parties that
Yeah,
he
the
had.
footage of those, he looks like an old man with a old
Here's
man
a
body and the pouch and
here's a photo of him at his at so this is probably more realistic, right? I doesn't look like what we saw on his sign.
no.
Uh, of note, the woman behind him, and we'll probably talk about her later, but just so we're, I'm mentioning it all while this photo is up, and if we need to bring it up later, we can. But this lady's name is Marissa Rodriguez. No, Maribel Rodriguez. She's from Dominican Republic, but she'll come up again later. But
Oh yes, she definitely does.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Tanya and I didn't talk about exactly what we were going to do, and we didn't plan this out. We just wanted it to be more of so I don't know what she has, on her mind and vice versa. But anyway,
Like I
I'll
said,
take
it's a
this.
casual chat between friends. We have no idea what's going to come out of each other's mouths.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll remove this, obscenity from the stream. We can pull it up again if we need to, but oops, I'm messing stuff up as I'm trying to rearrange stuff on my screen.
Okay, we
Okay.
got him out of there now.
I hope so. Wait, is
Oh,
he back on?
uh-oh.
Did you add him back? I'll remove him again.
I just removed him. Just leave it. It'll come off.
Oh, okay. Well, I just
There we
removed
go.
it too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't come back on again.
Yeah, we've had
You know,
enough.
it's funny because that's exactly what he does.
He's like Beetlejuice. If you say his name 3 times, he'll show up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I've got a watery eye.
It's okay. Yeah, so where did you want to go from here? So we kind of told a little bit about who he is and maybe a little bit about his
Yeah.
personality and how he decides to brand himself
And he's a very controlling, manipulative person is how he's been described. And I definitely would agree.
yeah.
And one of those manipulations is that he only gives you little pieces of information and he makes sure you never get any more.
Yeah, that's
And
a common
also he
tactic.
uses
Yeah.
lawsuits, which is very common for these wealthy pedo ring people, right? Is they use lawsuits to silence people.
Yes. And he used lawsuits against CBC. They did that podcast.
The lawsuits actually started way before that, way back in the 90s when they
Oh,
started
yeah.
trying to report on allegations. Every
Yeah.
time they tried, he would shut them down with lawsuits. So there were
Yeah.
articles that were ready to be published and never did get published, and the
Mm-hmm.
women's stories were being silenced. And
Yes.
they were non-disclosure agreements, they were being silenced with lawsuits.
And with culture and social mores.
Especially in the Bahamas, but yes, here too.
Yeah. And I have on my notes here, let's see, in 1980, and I know that there were allegations long before this, but this is just one example. But in 1980, there were charges brought against him, and it ended up they had to drop them because the complainant wouldn't appear in court. She refused to what I write here, refused to testify. So
Yeah,
I'm
and that
sure
would have
there's a
been
lot of
purely
that.
out of fear. That would
Right.
have been purely out of fear because of his power, his intimidation, and like Jeffrey, we can't say his name on YouTube, had his entourage and his team that all worked together to intimidate, terrorize.
And like you mentioned before, compartmentalize, what
Yeah.
people know. Um, Even, in the Bahamas, well, another thing he did, let's talk about Bahamas, right? So we know he started in Canada with his antics, and then he bought a 3-acre island key in Bahamas. And
It was 1 acre when he bought it.
well, it was, I read that, so here we go with, there's so much misinformation, but I read that it was the
Yeah.
person who the EPA guy out there, the environmental guy out there, said that it was 3 acres when he bought it, and then he participated in illegal dredging for like 12 years, he said.
Yeah.
And now the island is 6 acres, so it doubled in
Oh,
size. It
okay.
went from 3 to
Yeah.
6 acres. Yeah, so you might
That
have,
sounds right.
who knows, it
I
might have
I
started
I
at
might
1
have had
acre.
different numbers, but I definitely remember he doubled it by illegal dredging.
Yeah, yeah. Well, then it's definitely, it
What
was 3 acres
exactly
then,
the
because it's
numbers are,
definitely
we
bigger
don't
than,
know because we're. What's that?
no, I
Go
missed
ahead.
what you said.
We don't know exactly the numbers because we hear different things in different tellings. So, but
Yeah.
definitely he doubled it by illegal dredging. That we do know.
Well, if he doubled it, then I think we can rest assured that it didn't start out as 1 acre, because that would mean that it's only 2 acres now. And when you see the aerial views and the photographs, it's definitely larger than 2 acres. There's several
True.
beaches, there's, a huge property on it. And, he became entrenched in that uh, socio-political environment, and he would have private parties and events, and he was hiring local law enforcement officers as private security for these events. So these people are already on his payroll from, jump. And so he,
And in my opinion, that was purely for intimidation.
oh, I think I'm sure there are multiple reasons for it. That guy that was talking about, is that Pippin?
I need to go let them out.
Okay. It sounds like a mush, uh, a toboggan team of dogs. But the environmental guy there was saying that anybody who opposed him had coincidental things happen to them. The one guy, his car exploded. He would investigate folks and learn about them, and so he would know how to exploit them. He hired hitmen. He obviously had access to drugs once we start hearing about some of these victim stories. So he was well connected, in that area. And he was friends with, well, do you know much about, what is it, Kelly Christie? What's his name? Perry Christie.
Which one's he?
The Prime
There's
Minister
so
of
many
Bahamas.
characters. Oh, okay, yes. Sorry, I wasn't sure where we were because I'd stepped away. um, I don't know a lot about him, but I do know that he attended a lot of the pamper parties and he was definitely covering and definitely probably more involved than what we know. And that
So,
Nygard
yeah,
basically bought him, and he went to Nygard's daughter's wedding in Toronto.
yeah, he did. So, gosh, trying to
Like
think
Nygard
if I
paid his
remember.
campaign millions of dollars, and so he would look the other way.
I don't know. I didn't hear that, but what I did hear, and I can't remember the exact year, but before he became prime minister, when he was like a cabinet minister in Bahamas, um, Nygard was already giving him money for his campaigns. And then when he actually ran for prime minister and won the seat, it was funny to hear the celebration because Nygard was celebrating and he said, he just never
We won.
imagined. Yeah, he just never imagined that he would be so involved in politics but here he is, and he said, and then to be like the key instrument to making this a reality is what he said. I mean, he thought he was the key instrument in making this guy prime minister, and I'm sure he had a hand in it. He had money in it, right? But he's
But
just so
having money in
grandiose.
it doesn't make him instrumental.
Yeah,
So it makes you
well,
wonder what else was going on. Or was it just his narcissism talking?
yeah, I think it was probably a lot of narcissism talking, but who knows? you know I'm sure he compromised folks. Do you remember the name of the island that it was in New Providence, Bahamas? Didn't he call it Nygard Key? Wasn't Chris is
Yeah,
asking the name of the
Nygard Key.
island?
Yeah, I saw that. I just brought it up on screen. I do know it's Nygard Key, but what island it's on, I can't remember.
Well, that's
I
the
didn't
name of
bring.
the island, is Nygard Key.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it's part of the I guess city of New Providence in Bahamas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I write down what it used to be called before he bought it? Oh no. I don't know if I did. Nope. Doesn't look like I did. Sims Point on
Sims
Lifer Key.
on what?
Sims it's Lifer Key, and then he renamed it Nygard Key.
Ah, okay. Interesting, isn't it? Now he hasn't been back since 2018. He didn't he had charges on him in Bahamas for environmental stuff, and he never came back for sentencing or for the rest of his hearing, and so he can't. I mean, if he goes back to Bahamas, he'll be arrested immediately. I guess he's basically banned from the Bahamas since 2018. So now his
Yeah.
entire key is deserted and abandoned.
Yeah, and what we didn't really get into what he did there
Right.
besides the illegal dredging on this massive, and apparently he did this at his Malibu estate as well on a smaller scale. But I think it was Malibu. Anyway, he would have every Sunday a pamper party, as he called it, which was billed as massages, pedicures, free food, free drink, just have a big party. He's got a disco, he's got a theater, he has a bar, he has the whole 9 yards out there, right? it's basically a big party house, right? With the jacuzzi, the pool, all of that stuff, right? And so
Yeah.
every Sunday he would have these big pamper parties, and that's how he built it. And it was recruiting almost exclusively very young girls. He said the younger the better. We've heard as anywhere from 14 all the way up to 24, 25-year-old girls, women going to these parties. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, very young. And like you
And
said,
then and it would start out that way, and then as the night wears on and people are getting drunk and things are, getting a little out of control, that's when Peter shows up and basically, as one staffer said, goes shopping for girls.
yeah. So during the day, there would be manicures, pedicures, massages, um,
And then you end
vo-
the night off by being raped
beach,
by Peter Nygard and his
uh,
friends.
yeah, beach volleyball. They would have food and drinks.
Tennis, all kinds of, like, anything you could want.
They would ride on jet boats, and these girls would be recruited from, inner city Nassau. Um, and they'd never seen luxury like this, and
No, they
so
were very poor, impoverished
right,
young girls, and he was preying on that
right,
vulnerability.
right. And
And then
so
when they get there, he's got this database that they have to fill in with all of their information: height, weight, age, hair color, clothing sizes, photograph.
they would do two photographs. They would do a headshot and then a full body shot, and then they would have to complete this like demographics, their, like you said, height, weight, their email address, their phone number, their home address,
Instagram.
right, their social
Yep.
media. And then the person at the door would send it back, would email it to Peter. Peter would personally decide who was coming in, who was not. And then these girls, during the day, they would do all this fun stuff. They were told to come in swim attire because it was a beach affair. And so they
Yep.
would show up in skimpy clothing. And then in the evening, when the sun would go
And
down,
if
then they
they
would have,
didn't show up in the skimpy clothing, he would have an arsenal of bathing suits there for them.
yes, he did. And then in the evening time, it would be, a disco. They would have DJs come in. One of the, I actually, I don't know if you found this in your research, but one of the invitations, one of the actual invitations, it was a email, and it was sent, and it was just so interesting to read. And he said,
Yeah,
or
didn't it
the,
say it was really cheesy, I thought.
hmm, I don't know, but it said, don't, that, girls were invited only, and, you could
Leave
bring
your friends behind and come and have
unlimited.
a good time.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
remember that line. Leave your boyfriend at home and come and have a good time.
That's not the one that I read, but I'm
Oh,
sure
okay.
there were multiple. But
Yeah.
just that he would say, bring as many friends as you would like, as long as they're female. He did say that. And
And
that,
your size are smaller.
yeah,
They have to be
yeah.
skinny. They have to have hips. Like, and another thing was that he would promise these women and girls. Jason, can you take my phone? I can't get it to shut off. Can you take it out of the room, please? It just started ringing. Sorry. Anyway, where were we?
So
Oh yeah, he would promise them modeling jobs, which doesn't make sense to me when he is selling clothing targeted at women over 30, yet he is promising modeling jobs to 14, 15-year-old girls.
fair point. Yeah. So I do have, can I play a couple clips? Is that okay? Or
Absolutely, yep. I didn't set anything up just because I'm using this new computer. It's not working very well. So
okay. Well, I have, let me,
you've got to share, I appreciate.
okay. Give me just a second. Don't add me to the stream yet. Let me set it up.
Okay. So yeah, he would show up at night and then basically take his pick of the litter and sexually abuse, assault women and girls. He would sometimes recruit those same women and girls to help him recruit more.
It was a huge
Create
pyramid
this
scheme.
vast network.
Yeah, it was a huge pyramid scheme because each friend, if each girl that they could recruit would bring 4 or 5 friends, then the next time they come, they would bring 4 or 5 friends, each one. And so it was this huge pyramid scheme. There was never a shortage of women for him, or girls, I should say, because they weren't women. But let me, okay, go ahead, and I think you can add it to the stream.
Okay.
And then I'll wait to play it until I see that it's on there.
Yeah. Is it coming up yet?
I don't see it yet.
Oh, let's try that again.
There you go. Okay. I just have a couple clips, and so you'll have to bear with me as I, play and pause, because of course you don't want to get, use their stuff and get copyright and all that. But there are just a couple clips that I think really exemplified, encapsulate some ideas. So let me just check my timestamps here. I'm going to put myself on my camera off so I don't look like a crazy person, like looking real close like that with my bad eyes.
Sure.
Okay. All right. And then I'm going to play it just for a brief second. It shouldn't be very loud, but make sure you can hear it and make sure that I'm not echoing. Okay.
Okay.
After a few moments of
That seems okay so far.
Okay. Could you hear it when I started playing it?
Yep.
Okay.
And it didn't seem echoey, so I think you're okay.
Okay, perfect. I have to mute myself so it doesn't echo. So if I'm delayed in responding or something, that's why. So let me mute myself again, and then I'll go ahead and play these clips, and then we can talk about them if you want.
Okay.
of answering questions, I felt really nauseous. I felt sick, like I wasn't myself. He said, let's go it was a bedroom area. I can't remember every single thing.
Nygard asked if she had had sex before. She said no.
After a few moments of answering questions, I felt really nauseous. I felt sick, like I wasn't myself. He said, let's go it was a bedroom area. It was floral sheeting. I could remember there was a very large, like a mirror in the ceiling. There was a bay view where you could see directly. There was like the room was surrounded by water. He told me to sit onto the bed. He was pulling on my hand and stuff, and I felt so uncomfortable. I was confused. My head started spinning. I felt like I wanted to throw up, and it wasn't coming up. And he started pushing on me, and I started saying, "Stop, stop!" And like I say, feeling the way I felt, it was more like I was doing 100%, but my body was feeling otherwise. I hadn't felt that way before, not ever. I started saying stop, he stopped. So I thought like it was the end. He went into an area of the room, pulled out a drawer, and he got something. His back was turned to me. And it was like, you looking at something like everything was just spinning and rotating. And he came back towards me. I had on a sweatpants. He started pulling down on my sweatpants and
Okay, that's the first one. And I think with that one, this is Jane Doe number one. She was 15 years old when she was recruited from her neighborhood. And she said she had never been to this area of the island before. And it was so luxurious, and she had never seen anything like that. The homes had, they were beachfront property. She had never seen so many beautiful palm trees. And the person who recruited her brought her, and she got to the door and she was asked all these, questions, the prerequisite questions that you and I talked about, and was then brought into Peter Nygard's suite, and he offered her a glass of wine. And again, she's 15, and she didn't drink the entire glass. She only drank a few drinks of it. And that's what she's talking about when she's saying she was started feeling sick all of a sudden. Her head was spinning, the room was spinning, and then next thing she knows, he's pulling her sweatpants down. So I think, without jeopardizing your YouTube platform, people can get the idea of what happened next. But I have another clip here. So that was Jane Doe number one. And then somebody, an ex-employee of Nygard's, I believe this is her speaking, and she's talking about at the end of the night when the ladies would leave, or the girls would leave. Okay, so I'm going to mute myself and play this.
For those who worked at Nygard Quay, like Natasha Codner, exits like these were a familiar sight.
When they come down the next morning, leaving like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, they look disorientated, like, shit, what happened? What went down? I can't remember anything. And then you talking to them, they just snap at you, Miss, let me out this effing gate. Let me out the effing gate. I just want to leave. Dang effing.
So that's the morning after, around 7 or 8 a.m. when, they said that the girls would just be shuffled in and out of his bedroom all night long, 2 or 3 at a time, from the time the disco started.
And this would happen once a week over a period of, was it 12 years? Of 10 years. So you think about how many victims that would be just with that alone. not including all of the assaults elsewhere in the world.
Right. Exactly. And I'm sorry, I think
And
I
there
might
would
have
be
said,
hundreds of girls at each party.
yeah. Oh,
So
hundreds.
even
Yes.
if they weren't assaulted, they could potentially have been drugged. They may have been victims of groping, grabbing, other inappropriate behavior.
Yeah. Well,
And it wasn't
remember,
just him. Sometimes it was his friends too.
remember the man he hired? He said that the only reason Jesus was so popular is because he had a good PR guy. And so he decided that because Jesus was so well documented, and that's why he is so well known, that he needed somebody to document his life. And so he hired that Stephen Ferralio or something like that. Ferralio.
Are you are you
And
talking about
to
the videographer?
the videographer. And for 3 years,
Yeah, I couldn't remember his name. Yeah,
that
and made him
videographer,
basically 24/7
yes,
video everything.
yes. For 3
So there
years,
is
he did
video
that.
evidence of what he was doing because he
And the
made this
underage
even.
girls.
Yep. And some
Yeah.
of the footage is incredibly graphic and disturbing.
Well, you know,
Just the dancing footage and stuff like that,
yeah.
because he was not shy.
No,
There's
no, he
footage of him
wasn't.
lifting up women's shirts without their consent,
Oh,
stuff
yes.
like that.
Yeah. Hi, Kitty. I think Kitty wants to visit. Hi. What are you doing? He came in here and meowed. Oh.
So he's been banned from the Bahamas. He can't go back. He's now living between the US and Canada. And allegations are starting to come out because of he had gotten into a massive feud with his neighbor, Louis Bacon, in the Bahamas over all of this dredging. And Louis Bacon was starting to uncover all of this that was going on in Nygard Key, where he would do this to women and girls every Sunday. He would bring people over from other countries and hold their passports hostage, basically hold them hostage and do this to them. So all of this going on, and now he's facing charges. If he goes to the Bahamas, he's gonna get arrested. So he's done. He's done in Nygard Key. He's basically blaming Louis Bacon, saying it's a conspiracy, but there
Yeah.
are documented all the way back to the 1970s.
Yeah.
And
that whole feud with Bacon, his neighbor in the Bahamas. So Bacon is a retired American businessman, hedge fund guy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and he is Nygard's neighbor out there, or Nygard case. The whole thing started over a dispute over a shared driveway and like these crazy parties.
And loud music. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, now Peter Nygard, this neighbor guy is his nemesis.
But Louis Bacon is even richer than Nygard.
Yeah.
So he has the wherewithal to fight the battle, unlike most of the people that Nygard has tried to intimidate and abuse.
In fact, Louis Bacon funded the videographer, that Stephen guy, provided cost of living for a couple of years and some other things, because he wanted to release these videos, but he knew he would be blacklisted and dead in the water and no way of having income or a safe place to live. Anybody who opposed him, Nygard, had things happen to them. Their cars exploded, things happened. And so, they'd have burglary.
Windshield smashed out while they're in the car.
Yeah. And so, these people, Louis Bacon provided a measure of protection to some of these people that have come out to help, expose all these horrible things that Nygard has been doing all these years. And thank
Yeah,
God
and he
for
provided
him.
the attorneys for the lawsuits.
Yeah. I was going to say earlier, I think I said Jane Doe number 3 or 1, but who we heard with that first clip was Jane Doe number 3. She was 15 years old. Jane Doe number 1 was 14 years old. And then we briefly mentioned the girl in the red who was in that photograph with Nygard in the beginning, and that is Maribel, who Rodriguez, who's from Dominican Republic, and she met him when she was 16 or 17 years old. And that Steven has video of her, dancing on that pole in his private plane, sleeping in his bed in his private plane, girls strewn everywhere. And I mean, it's just ridiculous that he was able to get away with this for so long. And I think what we should close out with here in the last 15 minutes or so is, how did he get away with it for so long? But there are a couple more clips. Let me play these. There's 2 more clips on this video that I have up now, and then there's a clip from oh, hi George. This is George. I see the comment. Let's see, Kitty. This is one of them. It was the other one that came and visited a minute ago, but this is George. Oh, here's Toaster Bun. Okay, Kitty. This is Toby, Murder Mittens. He's our hunter. He keeps the rodents and stuff away. All right, I'll focus again. Let me turn my camera off, and I got to mute myself again. And then I'm going to play 2 clips, and then we can talk about them. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Consent talked about in the Bahamas. Men, we have to protect men from lying women. That's the whole argument I see here. And also that men in this country can't be held accountable for the fact that a young girl looks like a woman, even if she's not of age. Like, oh, she's so fast. Oh, and fast means fresh, and fresh means sexually forward or advanced. Man, listen, I every time I think about these things, it breaks my heart. We have this issue right now where we have a lot of young girls, 13, 14. Sometimes you'll say, the police will say, they're missing. And we would find out later that they are by some older man's house. And so the story is, she by man. This is our vernacular. She by man. She too fresh. She too forward. Never taking into account that a young girl may have been groomed. 1, 2. What is the penalty for the man? Why is his face not being paraded on the news? Why is it always the child?
Endemic levels of gender-based violence.
And you have police officers, you can go into the station, and depending on who it is in society, if it's some politician's son, if it's some business owner's child, whatever, they won't even take your complaint.
So I think, that kind of speaks to the culture there that allows someone like Peter Nygard or Jeffrey, you know who, or any of the other hundreds or thousands of predators to thrive. This is the environment, and these are the social mores and cultural things that help and enable folks like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're getting at the end here, we're going to just quickly breeze through. So he was arrested in Winnipeg on charges coming out of, I believe, New York. And eventually he agreed to extradition, but then Toronto stepped in and they laid charges. Winnipeg declined to lay charges in the cases of the women there who came forward, which is tragic for them. Heart goes out to them. So right now he is awaiting trial in Toronto. He was arrested in, I believe, 2021, and now he's still awaiting trial. Justice goes slow.
Justice has its own timing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And he's 83 years old. His health is declining. He's no longer receiving all of the injections and testosterone and whatever else was
The
helping
stem
him.
cells, remember the stem cells?
Yeah. We don't want to start on that. We'll be here all night.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
It is. It is. So, yeah, that's basically in a nutshell Peter Nygard, currently awaiting trial in Toronto. He's also got pending charges in New York, Quebec, Bahamas. So everybody wants this guy now, except Winnipeg, apparently.
I have, except for Winnipeg, I have a clip to close with if you want.
Okay.
Whenever that time comes. Let me grab it here.
So I guess the reason I wanted to talk about this is because we need to be aware of the things that allow these things to happen. And it's not always on a huge scale like Nygard. Sometimes it is as simple as the guy in the bar that gets the girl drunk and takes her home. We need to understand consent. We need to understand limitations, power imbalance, things like that that allow these things to happen.
Yep. Exactly. Okay. Well, I have this clip. If you want to add it to the stream, I'll play it, and then that's the last thing I've got. It's
okay.
It's 50 seconds long, and this is from CBC.
Yeah,
Evil by Design.
They've done
They
a
did
lot.
a great
They did the Evil by
podcast.
Design podcast and the show at also Evil by Design. Or no.
The Fifth Estate.
Yeah, and there was the Fifth Estate did several episodes as well. So
yeah, and what I learned is that Fifth Estate and Evil by Design, they actually work together. They're part of the same company. Yeah, I didn't know that, being an American. But that they're both run
they're both CBC,
by CBC. Yeah. Canadian Broadcasting Company. So all right, here we go.
rights. It's a piratical, opportunistic society, going back to the years of the pirates, and then the rum running, and then the drugs, and then, notwithstanding, the beautiful hotels and everything, the Bahamas is a very poor country, and corruption is endemic, it is ubiquitous, and it is rife in the Bahamas. Worse still, the whole social acceptance that sex tourism is okay, that sex with young girls is okay. We're fighting human trafficking and we're fighting sex tourism, and this would be a really good opportunity for the Bahamas to purge itself of a lot of these horrific embedded social mores.
Oh no, I hope that didn't echo. I bet it did, because I didn't mute myself, but I still think hopefully people will be able to hear it. Okay, if not, I can replay it.
Didn't
But
echo on my end.
well, I don't know. Oh, okay, that's good. All right, but they make a good point. This is each one of these tragedies that we encounter in true crime, or even in our own lives. They provide us opportunities to fix things, because, oh, good. Thanks, Curtis. These problems, yes, they're individuals that are doing things, but that they are able to happen is a systemic issue. So these bring up good opportunities for us to make positive changes in our communities and communities around the world, and to protect women and men, girls and boys, because this isn't just a female thing. Peter Nygard's preference was girls, but there are lots of folks who have a preference for boys. And this is a universal human issue, and it's something that we should take very seriously and do everything we can to make changes large scale, to prevent this kind of thing from thriving in our communities. So
Yeah, and that's basically what I wanted to say, only probably more eloquent and
yeah, you definitely would have. But yeah, it's just, there's no end to these types of stories. They're ubiquitous with humankind.
And they will continue if changes aren't made. Now, I'm no lawmaker. I don't know what needs to be done, but I do know that even just changing our attitudes and having those hard conversations is the first step.
We'll never be able to eradicate it completely, because a lot of it is, human behavior. As long as there are humans, humans are predators. We're apex predators. There's a reason that we're in the position we're in, and, we don't have to worry about birds swooping down and killing us, or, what have you. We're smarter, right, than the average bear. And so as long as humans are here and breathing, there is going to be predation. But it's our responsibility to take every measure we can to prevent it from happening in our homes, in our communities, and everywhere.
Yeah, and don't turn a blind eye,
Right.
Right. A very simple example would be there is a local gentleman in my community who is a sex predator, definitely. And I work in retail. He came into the store one time and was making some very inappropriate remarks to a colleague, and he was escorted out, and that's what needs to be done.
Right.
I received some backlash and some attitude from some people when I talked about it, because they would say, oh, well, he wasn't doing anything. He just made a comment. Like, it's a free country. He can say what he wants, and you shouldn't ban him just for a remark. He didn't actually do anything. No, that's where it starts. You nip it before it gets worse. Not
Yeah.
only
Well,
that, but the person on the receiving end of those remarks is traumatized, and
mhm.
she didn't deserve that, and I'm not going to let anyone treat her like that.
Yeah. Well, and speaking and talking to people, that is an action. That is doing something. So they can't hardly say, oh, he didn't do anything. No, he did do something. He didn't do something to you personally, perhaps, but he did something to this young lady over here. So, I mean, that's what we have to do. I'm proud of you for standing up for her.
Thank you. It was just an example I came up with of how in our day-to-day lives we can combat that.
Yeah,
And
we can.
you
And
know,
also,
just by, if you see a woman in a grocery store looking uncomfortable, talk to her, find out what's
yeah,
going on.
or keep an eye on her. If you don't feel comfortable talking to her, just keep an eye on her. Make sure she's safe.
Yeah, or report it to staff or whatever,
I shouldn't say keep an eye on her, like stalk her around the store or anything.
No,
but,
no.
Yeah.
I think I got what you meant.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for having me on, Tanya. I appreciate it. It was
I
fun getting to chat
appreciate
with
you
you.
joining me. I've enjoyed the conversation. I hope everyone else has.
Me too. I
And
hope so too.
it's been very good. I enjoy talking to you. I find you very well informed and articulate, and I learn a lot from you when we chat. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All
Thank you,
right. Well,
everyone, for being here, and have a good night. Do you have any last words, Piper?
no, just good night, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.
Good night, all. Oh, this computer is slow. Yeah. I hope it actually ended. I don't know if it did.